here while being a graduate student and learning a little bit more about it. And it can be sort of a daunting process. And I know some of you who have started down this path have found that to be true. It's not always the case, but occasionally you'll run into some barriers that seem to complicate the process. But maybe if you have a better sense, a greater sense of why we get into this and the benefits and options about different kinds of publications and venues of publications, maybe your confidence will be boosted a little bit and you'll feel more inclined to try it. I'll start by saying too that as a former student in this program and proud graduate, my advisor, Mike Moore, who remains my advisor for life, urged me when I was a student to go ahead and get started, because he would say that, you should write about what you do. Of course, my question was, well, I haven't really done any research. I'm a graduate student. What am I doing here? And I haven't even started my dissertation. And so he would say, write about what you're working on in your graduate assistantship, class projects, take opportunities to share the work that you're currently doing, because there are different kinds of publications that you can pursue. And anyway, and so toward the reason why you want to do that is, well, first of all, in a university, it's our responsibility, right, to advance knowledge. And that happens in different ways. It happens through teaching. And in a Research One institution like Virginia Tech, research is our primary responsibility. And so, our number one goal is to advance knowledge in our discipline, but also to advance knowledge on behalf of the university. And publication is one way to do that, to share your discoveries and your innovations with the world. And so that makes you look good as a researcher. It establishes you as an expert in a particular area, and starts you down that path. And then it helps the university and its stature as a research institution. Not every institution requires publication. Some institutions, of which there are many, there are several different classifications of universities, but a Research One institution like Virginia Tech has the most sort of demanding, you might say, expectations in terms of faculty publication and scholarship, because that's our primary responsibility. Comprehensive universities or more teaching focused universities still require publication and some form of scholarship, not to the extent of a Research One institution, but they certainly do. And so even though you may not be pursuing several publications a year, still you have to find ways to get your work out into the world. And so publication is a great way to do that. So there are different venues in instructional design and technology. In our world, we have different publication opportunities, such as journals. And I'll have to say that for our discipline, and Dr. Hodges, you can certainly chime in here and or add a different perspective if you wish. But I believe in our world, the journal article, the peer-reviewed journal article, I should say, is the coin of the realm. It is the most highly valued form of publication in a Research One institution like Virginia Tech. So we can write book chapters, and they are highly regarded. They're usually invited, and that's a good thing too. That demonstrates that you're recognized for your potential to address certain topics, right? So that's a good thing. But the blind, especially double-blind peer-reviewed process, demonstrates that your work is, judged to be of high quality in an unbiased peer review process, and that is the most credible way or credible form in the eyes of a research institution. A peer-reviewed journal article, such as tech trends or ETR&D is of great value. And so that's where we tend to focus our efforts, particularly pre-tenure faculty tend to focus on publishing in peer-reviewed journals. And then other publications are certainly acceptable and also demonstrate your contributions and your productivity, such as book chapters or books. You probably wouldn't write a book until you're, later in your career, but because it is so incredibly time intensive. But anyway, my other colleague, my terrific mentor, Dr. John Burton, and former colleague, now retired, used to say, promotion and tenure committees may not know how to read, but they sure know how to count. So, so you can have, probably 8, 10, 12 journal articles in the time it would take you to write a book. Or a comprehensive book. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. And again, these kinds of publications are valued differently depending upon the institution and the expectations of that institution and the culture of the institution. So with that, I'm going to stop talking about the general big picture view of publishing expectations and rationale and turn it over to Dr. Hodges, who's going to give you his perspective as an editor and also frequent author himself. Dr. Hodges.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't agree more with everything you said.
Oh, good.
And, I will comment that to follow up a little bit. Dr. Lockee mentioned there were different categories of institutions and kind of what kind of expectations there are. If that's a new idea to you, like if you're not sure what that means, a university like Virginia Tech is at the top of the research categories, up there with Harvard and Yale and all those places. And then there's a second tier that focuses on research a little less, maybe. That's where Georgia Southern is. And if you're trying to decide maybe where you want to look for jobs and things like that, most of those places you can find faculty handbooks or promotion and tenure criteria, and you can look and see, like, to be successful, how much would I have to publish, or what kind of things do they value, and you can explore those things. It's helpful to look at those before you actually take the job too. If you don't enjoy writing, then you maybe don't want to be in those top 1 or 2 tiers necessarily, because you're going to have to write. But I'm here to talk about just kind of academic publishing in general. And why are you going to do this? You shouldn't do it just to rack up lines on a CV. Those are important for job searches and faculty promotion and tenure times, but you should have an interest in something that you want to study, and then publishing makes you smarter. It makes you better. It gets your ideas out there and shared with others. Kind of helps bring you into the community of scholars that you're hoping to join. So if you have fears of rejection, you're going to have to get over those. That's another one of those things. If you don't like to write, if you have this fear of rejection in your writing, scholarly journals, I shared a list of Google's top 20 in the chat box there. Peer-reviewed journals like that, if you haven't heard people talk about acceptance rates, that's one metric for journals, and usually the lower acceptance rate, kind of the more prestigious the journal is perceived. That can also just mean they get a whole lot of submissions, but that also is tied to their prestige, because people want in the journals themselves. But even a kind of a really poor journal, scholarly journal, is going to have, a really bad one's going to have like a 50% acceptance rate. And that would be like horrible. People would look at that and go, oh, that's a bad journal. But if you think about that, that's a bad one. And it's still 50% chance you're going to not get accepted. The good ones like ETR&D, computers in education, you're talking about single digit acceptance rates. So more than likely, if you submit there, you're going to get rejected. You're just going to have to realize that from the start, just based on numbers. Tech Trends usually hovers around 25% acceptance, which I think is pretty deep. It makes it respectable, but not impossible to get published in, which I think is nice. So, you're going to write, you want to share your ideas, you want to get things out there. Where do you submit things? Where are you going to send something? Well, first of all, as a grad student, a good place to start is your more advanced peers and mentors who maybe have some experience. And you could ask somebody like Dr. Lockee, hey, I wrote this. Do you think it's worth sending somewhere? So, that's a great place to start. But also just the reference list for whatever it is you have created can kind of guide you a little bit. If you're citing a lot of ETR&D, a lot of computers in education, it's those types of journals that are interested in that kind of work. Another thing to consider, is it kind of like hardcore research or is it more practitioner focused? And kind of decide there. Personally, when I write something, it's, knowing that there's a good chance it's going to get rejected, just playing the numbers, I usually have a plan B. If this gets rejected here, I'm going to send it to this other place. So I usually line up a couple of places based on what I feel is a good fit. You'll hear people talk about the fit. And I never let the rejections bother me too bad. The double blind peer review, the reviewers, you don't know them and they don't know you. So you can't really take it personally. Sometimes when you submit an article to a journal, the standard responses are, reject, which means don't send it there again, take it somewhere else. Major or minor revisions, that means you're going to change some things based on comments, you're going to send it back. Or accept as is, but that happens very rarely. Even with a journal like Tech Trends that has a reasonable acceptance rate of 25%. In the 6 years that I've been doing this, we had one that was accepted as is in 6 years. Mike Spector, who he's a pillar in our field and was editor of ETR&D for a long time, he always says on panel discussions like this, he always talks about in his time at ETR&D, they had one accept as is, and that was from Bob Gagne. So that doesn't happen a lot. Really, in my opinion, the best you can hope for when you turn something is minor revisions. I mean, that's a win. That's a huge win. Now, different journals have different responses. Those that I gave you, the reject, the major, minor revisions, and accept as is, those are kind of traditional and standard, but other places have, maybe an extra one in there somewhere. If you have trouble negotiating what that means when you get your feedback from the editor and the feedback from the reviewers, that's a time you can communicate with the editor. Editors are busy but lonely people. It's perfectly fine to write an editor and say, I got this feedback, but this person said it was great. This person said it was horrible. And you said it was, major revisions. What should I do? Do I do everything this person said? You can have that conversation and the editors will usually give you some guidance. If you don't want to reach out to the editor, again, more advanced peers and faculty mentors and things can help you negotiate that kind of thing. I think one of the most important things is just to not, don't have a thin skin. I've had a few pieces that I have shopped around for a while and they've gone to 5 different journals before they ended up published. Part of that tenacity is some advice from Dr. Mike Moore that Dr. Lockee mentioned. He said, if you keep working at it, if you keep revising and improving, it's going to fit somewhere. And, just don't drop things. You put a lot of time into something, get it out there. Maybe it eventually ends up in a book chapter instead of in a journal, but, keep at it, keep working on things. Major problems I see with authors who, submit things to Tech Trends and don't, lost one of my lights there, who just really aren't successful is they don't look at the advice to authors or the instructions for authors before they submit. So they don't follow formatting guidelines at all. They don't maybe incorporate certain elements of an article that are required by the journal. So I'm not talking about just necessarily APA style, but different journals have different specific formats. Dr. Lockee, were you jumping there? I saw you.
Yep.
You're doing one. I thought you were going to do one of these. Like, oh, I don't remember.
No.
So read the instructions for authors. Know the general format. One huge problems that I get with Tech Trends is it's like they never saw an issue of Tech Trends before they decided to submit to mine. So the title's a little bit cryptic, Tech Trends, that could mean a lot of things. So I'll get something that's a straight information technology article, how to make a good password or something like that, that's really an information technology article. So it just gets rejected immediately. So look at the journals, if you think, oh, I'm going to submit something to Tech Trends. Well, look at some recent issues of Tech Trends and just see, does my paper seem like it kind of fits in with these things? Are these the type of papers? And do that for any journal if you're going to submit to it. I maybe get a little bit too quantitative with things, but, I'll look at a journal and I'll say, I wonder how long a lit review they're expecting. So I'll pull a couple of issues and just kind of eyeball and go, oh, they want lit reviews that are, X hundred words long. Well, I don't want to turn in something to a journal with twice the size of lit review that it seems like they're publishing. I want to kind of be on target. So I even go that far as to kind of look at how they should match up. I don't know what else to start off with there other than, follow those advice to authors. Don't have a thin skin. I don't know. What am I missing there, Dr. Lockee?
What about there's an issue we talked about earlier in our extensive planning discussion moment, the issue of the time of the review process and that differing across journals. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, that's an important thing to talk about. Usually with Tech Trends, if you submit something in 6 to 8 weeks, you'll probably get a response back. I really try to stick to 6 weeks, but sometimes, reviewers are volunteers. Sometimes they get held up with something and I have to nag them a little bit to get the work back. But, it's in 6 to 8 weeks. I think a good average across journals is probably like 3 months, It's not good form. I said that editors were busy but lonely people. It's not good form to email them 2 weeks after you submitted and ask, what's happening with your manuscript. I get that some. Give it 3 months and and ask. If you haven't heard anything, you can email an editor and just say you want a status update on your piece. You may want to be a little bit again, a little strategic about your publications. So if you're maybe getting ready to go in the job market soon, or you have some goal set for a piece, if you want a piece published pretty soon, maybe within the year, you may not want to send it to one of the top tier journals because the review process for some of those can be 6 months. And then if you have to make revisions and it goes back out, that's going to add more time. Some journals will tell you up front on their web pages about kind of how long the review process is. Sometimes you can talk to peers and see, you know, I was thinking about submitting here. How long did it take? I kind of always approach things from, if I had a really good piece that I thought really belonged in a really good journal, then I was okay with that. I was okay with it taking longer. But I know I've got things like annual review for faculty coming up and things like that. And you like to have, like Dr. Burton said, they can count. You like to have something that came through. So maybe have something in like a mid-tier journal so you can have a line in there. But you don't want to necessarily put your best work in the mid-tier journal because you want it in a good journal. But you do have to kind of balance that productivity, and you want to think about timelines and, you know, how much you're going to have in there. So there's all these, I don't know, all these different variables with academic publishing. As you're going through promotion and tenure, you know, it's really great to aim for, you know, high impact, big journals. But if you're banking on that too much, you might not have anything to show at the end of the year or the end of a couple years. So I always like to kind of, you know, have a book chapter in there somewhere, have, you know, mid-tier, shoot for something higher level. That kind of a balance really works well.
So I guess if you guys are comfortable, we can open it up to questions. And I mean, the floor is open, everybody, and whatever kind of things that are burning in your mind to find out with publication opportunities, feel free to ask. I'll try to moderate a bit, so go forth and conquer.
I have a question. You all were mentioning that different journals can have different acceptance rates. Is that something that's publicly available or posted on the journal's website? How would you find that out?
Oftentimes it's on the journal's website. Not always. In the world of journals, it's a big deal to have a Clarivate impact factor. It used to be Thomson's something, I don't know, but now it's the Clarivate stuff. And you'll more likely see an impact factor listed on a web page if they have it than an acceptance rate. Usually you can look up things like Cabell's directory of publishing opportunities, a few other places like that. The site scores, some resources from publishers. If you really can't find it and you're interested, that's another thing the editor can share with you usually.
Thank you.
That's something too that, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, don't let the low acceptance rates dissuade you. You know, if you have something that you think is good, submit it and go for it.
Absolutely. I was going to say too that the impact factor and the acceptance rate will vary over time because it's calculated based on, you know, different numbers, like how many submissions there are, and so, and that's going to fluctuate over time. So anyway, that I found myself when I were putting materials together for promotion and tenure, contacting editors to get specific rates for the year. Now that was for, you know, you don't need to do that every time, but like Dr. Hodges said, that if it's not on the website for the journal, the editor can certainly give you that information.
And different levels of institutions, like that's one place where I think the different types of institutions really differ. You know, research one like Virginia Tech is going to want you aiming for those top tier all the time. Other stuff is good, but they're going to want the top tier stuff, right, Dr. Lockee?
That's right. Absolutely.
Georgia Southern, they're really thrilled with top tier, but they really want us getting stuff out there. So mid tier and above is good. We've got some people here that don't do a lot of writing, so they like it if we're being productive in writing. They're like Tech Trends, the journal I edit, it doesn't have one of the Clarivate impact factors for various reasons. That's another thing we could talk about. But it's like, if I were to say, oh, it's in Google Scholar's list of top 20, it's number 10 on Google Scholar's list of journals, then my institution is happy with that. They're like, oh, wow, it's one of the top 20 journals. But Virginia Tech would be less impressed with that.
I have questions regarding how do we know if the journal is not a predatory journal?
Oh, good question.
That is a great question. Do you want to go, Dr. Lockee? I've got something to say on that too.
Well, I guess my thinking would be to consult with other, experts in the field or in faculty and anybody who's published in the field, that you feel comfortable contacting, just to say, do you know about this journal, and have you heard of it? Are you aware of it? Because there are predatory journals out there, and it's especially related to technology. Gosh, it seems like I get, and I'm sure the same is true for you all. If you have any sort of connections with the academic publishing world, you probably get invitations to publish. And as soon as you publish or put your dissertation on the Virginia Tech Library website, you're going to get invitations to publish it, as a whole, as a book, so to speak, without changing anything. And that should be a red flag right there, that, but I would just check with knowledgeable peers, and the list that Dr. Hodges posted, Google Scholars Top 20, is a good resource as well.
Yeah. Even just say 5 or 10 years ago, one of my first responses to your question would have been, are they asking you for money to publish? That has gotten a little bit more blurry now because of open access. And you might have a journal that wants to charge you an article processing fee, but it's going to be open access. I still think in our field, that's a little questionable. That should be a red flag that makes you look for things. In some fields, some engineering, computer science places, having to pay to have your articles published has been kind of standard for a long time. In our field, there are plenty of really reputable journals that do not charge the authors at all. So, I still kind of think of that, if they're asking you to pay something, or like Dr. Lockee mentioned, if they're just contacting you, if it seems like a form email, especially if it's not worded that well or formed that well, it's very flattering to get a note that says, hey, I noticed you presented at the AACT conference. Would you like to publish in our journal? Those things are a little shady to me. Now, as an individual, I might see somebody at a conference and email them and say, I'm the editor of Tech Trends, and it's going to be more legit. You should be able to tell from the email if it's a little bit more, legit interest in your work. Consider submitting this to Tech Trends. But kind of these, I get on a pretty regular basis these funky emails asking me to publish places, and as you work from grad student into, doctoral candidate and on to faculty positions and things, all of your work follows you forever. So you want to kind of have some personal standards with your things, and have a decent track record. Don't go for the quick, publication right away. Something that might be a little predatory. I just had a thought while we were talking about things is, I don't want to stress out people, but I've also had the opportunity over the last few years to sit on several search committees for faculty members. If you enter the job market for faculty positions and you have 0 publications, you're going to be a little behind other people. I'm not saying you have to have this long list of publications, but there are a lot of students, a lot of doctoral students in our field who are really tearing up the world. And usually one of the requirements for a faculty position in an ad is something like demonstrated ability to publish or research or something like that. If you don't have a book chapter or a proceedings chapter or a journal article, those are the best ways to show that you have demonstrated ability to publish, is to have something. So I'm not saying you have to have 10 things, and don't drive people crazy, but it's really kind of behooves you, if this is the track you're on, to enter into this world of academic publishing.
Actually, my question's related to that, Dr. Hodges and Dr. Lockee. I guess if you're going into, like, my aim would be tenure track, again, as to whether those will be available in bunches when I'm out is another story. But academia is the aim, and as a graduate student, I know I have to publish, but what are the opportunities that would be like good starting points type thing? Like, I know there's the grad musing column in Tech Trends. That might not necessarily count coming out, but like things to kind of get your feet wet, because if you're terrified of writing for the public, then what do you do? So just if you have any kind of opportunities that you know of or can suggest.
Let me tell you this: the journal reviewers are usually terminal degree holders, professors, those kind of people in the field, but they don't know that you're not one of them. So, you submit to the best journals in the field as doctoral students. You don't have to have a doctorate finished, to do this. So, you can get in there. I always, if you're doing anything of significance in your doctoral work, if you're writing a lit review for a class, if you're writing a paper for a class, those are things that could legitimately go someplace. To talk to whoever you're writing those for. If you get a good grade on it, if you get some good feedback, ask, what could I do with this to take it a little bit further? Sometimes I get papers from students that were very clearly a class paper. And I would encourage you not to send your class paper directly to a journal. Usually it's going to need a little bit of something extra, or a different formatting, a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that, or something. But if you're putting a lot of time into something like that, then it could easily go somewhere. Another good way to do it is just collaborative efforts with, if you have a group of like-minded fellow students who want to be faculty, members, then you could, just decide, hey, we're going to have to publish. What's a common interest? Could we maybe get some mentoring from somebody like, Dr. Lockee, and she could help us, on this project. Maybe it's a review of papers in a journal over the last 5 years, or, maybe it's a kind of a small qualitative project about, life as an instructional technology graduate student, things like that, where, you can work together and get it done. It's something like the columns in Tech Trends, those aren't peer reviewed. Sure, it would be nice to have something to put on Avita, but they're not the big important, pieces as far as impressing someone with your publishing skills.
No, that's very nice to hear the difference, because a lot of times, and not here, but like you'll hear, oh, just like submit an opinion piece or something to these little like areas in journals just to get your feet wet, which is great. But for me, I'm like, well, that doesn't really, like, no one cares if I published in Grad Musings, which is, I mean, it's a great column, but to get in tenure track positions, they're gonna be like, what is this type thing?
Yeah, it's not that it's not, you know, everything's in a hierarchy. So, you know, it's better than
Yeah,
nothing.
of course.
You know, within the ACT community, it lets people see your name out there, you know, and it's, you know, so it does
True.
have some value, but it's not the same as other things.
Yeah.
Hi.
As the co-editor or am I co-editor of the column, the history corner column? Heather Leary and I get submissions, you know, and a lot of times they are from students. And as Dr. Hodges said, they're not peer reviewed, but they're reviewed by us, and it's somewhat competitive. And we've been really pleased to see some of the work that we've received over the past couple of years has been very impressive. So, but like Dr. Hodges said, there is a hierarchy, and you know, if you are planning to go or wishing to go into a research intensive career path, then, you know, I would be more strategic about where you start in a you know, a double blind peer reviewed opportunity as opposed to a non peer reviewed opportunity. Just be strategic about where you focus your efforts, because it is a lot of work and you want to get the most bang for your buck, so to speak.
Sarah, you had a question there.
Yeah, I did. So you kind of talked about how sometimes you might receive a paper that, you know, very much feels like it was a class paper written for a class. So I was wondering if you could talk to me a little bit about the distinction between that and then a theoretical piece you would submit to a journal. In tone, perhaps, getting a feel for that.
Yeah, a little bit of it is the tone. A little bit of it is, you know, if you look at the reference list for something that's a class paper and it has like 10 references or something like that, it's kind of, you're wondering, did the rubric for the assignment say must cite 10 sources or something? And so the length like that, the number of resources chosen, not good quality programs like the Virginia Tech program that all of us here are involved with. But other programs might allow you to cite some things that aren't necessarily the greatest quality references. So those things would be there. Or maybe would not be there in that sense. I don't know. It's just, when you read it, it seems like it's more like smaller in scope. You know, it's aimed to show that you have some basic background in an area, but not necessarily a deep background. Does that help?
That's really helpful. Yeah, thank you.
I have a question, please.
Sorry, Kamla, did you say something?
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity, first of all, Dr. Lockee, Dr. Hodges, Rebecca, and everyone. In fact, as you know, in our IDT program, we have this new approach for the prelim exam, which is the article writing or the article publication. I'm not sure if you really have priority list of journals you recommend for us as graduate students to go and, you know, put in focus for our publication, or it's an open one. What do you think?
I'd say it's open. That's a great question too, Kamala. And I'd say it's fairly open because the prelim experiences are customized for the student, right? So like Rebecca just finished hers, and she can talk about that experience. And do you want to talk about that, Rebecca, and how you came to the collection?
Yeah, sure. Dr. Lockee, Dr. Lockee is my advisor, and we came together and they send you off to start looking at journals. So based on the topic that you've chosen. So after you've selected the topic, you're looking for a target journal. And I made very clear that I was interested in instruction in adult literacy, how instructional design might fit into there, crossover into that field. So when I started looking at journals, I knew right away that this was not going to work in, like, whatever came out of this was not going to work in IDT journal. Like, just overall, I knew what the way I was going to look at it wasn't going to work. So I started looking at adult literacy journals as well, and I realized that I was offering something to that field. So I was going to start looking at their target journals. So I came up with Adult Education Quarterly, and then 2 of their subjournals, and we ranked them because there's a hierarchy and everything. We ranked them, and Dr. Lockee said, you know what, just go for it. Let's write for the top one, and we'll start there and see what happens. So that was my target. I did not end up picking Tech Trends or ATR&D or any of those because it wasn't the right fit, as Dr. Hodges had said. So this was a better fit for what I was writing, because it was going to be a conceptual piece on cognitive psychology and literacy core components, which doesn't really fit fully into what we're doing. But so once you come, I know you're looking at some similar things. If you look at English as a second language, you might find that an ESL journal is better for you. Not trying to push you away from IDT, but you might find that something in IDT helps them in the field. So you might look at some of your top ESL journals.
Yeah, because thank you for your insights, Rebecca.
I hope that helps. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for now, I'm just looking at AACT journals like JADE's Journal of Applied Instructional Design, mainly as also a target for me, because I'm trying to divert my attention a little bit now into cultural implications in the instructional design technology. So it's part of the field also that you have for JADE maybe, or Tech Trends. I'm not sure. Yes. But I'm trying to focus on these now. I haven't started anything. I'm just thinking ahead, where do I publish my papers after I finish?
Yeah.
So maybe one of those.
And Kamala, just to be clear for me, those papers that you're talking about, the dissertation format articles, those would not be something I would expect to look at and know it was a student paper. Those are things your committee you're going to be writing at the level that those are ready for publication. That's not what I'm talking about in terms of a student paper, something for a class. But those things, you could send to journals right away.
Yeah, with that, Kamala, when you go in for your prelim, and this is something we're hopefully going to be able to do as another professional development thing as well. But
exactly,
when you go in for your
prelim, I was just going to ask you, in fact, you and your folks, those who are ahead of us, if you can hold something really informal for us, we can have a chat, conversation.
It's coming. It's coming, hon. She's like me. We think ahead. It's coming. I have the It's a Course is going to be revived. It will be published for the next term, I promise. We're working on it. It will have that information in it because we had to go through the process so that we could write about the process. So, but it will be there for you. But the biggest thing is with the prelim, you're going to get, like Dr. Hodges said, like peer-reviewed grade feedback in that prelim session, like in a good way. Like, it's a very good way. You're with 4 people on your committee who are going to give you feedback to completely restructure that paper for the better. So, and I don't mean like restructure isn't like you did anything wrong. It's just they're going to give you everything you need to walk away and start writing a clean draft to work towards publication. And I love that about the process. Like it's fantastic.
My question is that, so does that mean that I'm going to pass my prelim even before getting published?
Oh, yeah, I haven't published mine. I mean, but I can't.
Okay.
That was my first question to come.
I'm glad to hear this because, I was worried, that I have to get published first so that I can, pass my prelim.
Yeah, I guess that's probably something we should clarify. I'll make that clear in the It's a Course.
Good. Yes, that's a great question too, Kamala. No, the scope of the prelim experience is that you would generate a paper that is publishable and sort of to get you on the way to publication. And there's no requirement that you publish it. We highly encourage you to do that. But anyway, and it was really a program level decision. All the faculty came together and we do this all the time. Dr. Hodges can attest to this. Because we're instructional designers, right? We're constantly changing things, constantly. My constantly is over 25 years. We've changed it 5 times. But so we tend to tweak how we do things because we think, there's always a better way. And the prelim experience has really evolved over the years from being a full lit review, which is a good thing that, that you can contribute toward the dissertation. But this most recent iteration, for those of you who don't know, is focused on a more collaborative interaction with your advisor to prepare a paper that will likely align with your research interest for your study, not a requirement, but will provide you with the opportunity to gain some experience in preparing to publish, because we feel like that's really a critical skill set, like we've talked about here for the past 52 minutes.
Dr. Lockee, is that format for the dissertation a requirement at Virginia Tech, or is it just an option?
Well, so there's the prelim format, which is an IDT thing, right? So the grad school just requires a prelim exam and leaves it up to the program for how that's done. And we've done it, like I said, at least 5 different ways over the past 25 years. But the dissertation approach is an option. The article, the manuscript format for the dissertation is an option. It's not a requirement.
So here at Georgia Southern, over the years, I still feel young and new, but I've been here now 11 and a half years, and I've had the opportunity of the years to end up in mentoring roles and things with new faculty. And I encourage you, if you have that option to do the manuscript format, one of the big problems I see with new faculty is they show up and one of the first things I say is, have you published out of your dissertation? And like, oh no, I need to work on that. And then it's a lot of work to bust it up into pieces, because you can't just rip out chapter 1 and go publish that. You have to turn it in. So if you have this option and you're thinking about, faculty roles, you could finish your doctorate and have 3 papers or something ready to go and not have to worry about that kind of, putting it all together in the dissertation and then chopping it up into pieces later. It really sets you up on a path for faculty life by having these things that you could submit.
It's great advice.
I don't mean to, oops. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so I have a question, and again, this is my first semester in the doctoral program, so I'm very much like in the headspace of difference between writing for class and writing for publication. So one of my questions in that regard was, when you're doing research, obviously you don't want to miss huge chunks of the field that are relevant to your topic, but I also feel like it's never ending, and my paper will just be so long if I, reference everything. So finding kind of that sweet spot of I'm making sure I am referencing what I need to, but also not being completely overwhelmed with, do I have to read literally everything on this topic in order to submit something for publication, is something I'm trying to figure out.
My advice is in your background reading for whatever it is you're constructing, you should be taking notes and looking at things. And when you get to the point where you're seeing the papers are always citing these 5 or 6 pieces, things start to be kind of cyclical. You don't have to read everything, but if you're reading enough that you're noticing patterns in, oh, everybody's citing this, then you're probably getting to that point where the core pieces. And then of course there's things like the ACT handbook on research and the, they almost do little lit reviews on big major topics that you could go and look at those pieces. That's always a great place to start.
I kind of have a follow-up question actually. So my topic is pretty interdisciplinary, which is like adding another element where I'm not sure which discipline's framework to use in a way. I mean, should I just make that call as a scholar?
How would you see yourself like when you graduate? Well, what discipline, where would you be looking for faculty positions?
So I'm in social studies education, although this paper I'm talking about right now is not about social studies. I just got very interested in a topic and I started writing a paper for class that I got excited about. I'm kind of sick of writing things that go into the void. No one ever reads them, you know?
I don't know. I would say, pick the one that either where you want to be, if you see yourself as a social studies educator, then maybe aim that direction if you can. But this new piece you're talking about, I don't know. I would probably say look at the reference list and where are the bulk of them situated.
Okay, thank you.
If you're citing a lot of stuff in, X field, then that's probably where it should be going.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And what do you say, Dr. Lockee?
Yeah, I do. I think that's great advice. And I know it's interdisciplinary work can be complicated that way. And your question is an excellent one. The situation is a common one for people in our field because we partner so often in educational projects in support of learning and professional development in disciplines from A to Z. And so my first publication was in a journal of Vet Med. And then I published in Wood Science. So it's sort of a blessing and a curse. But Rebecca's prelim is a good example too. We, in our world in education, we work across disciplines. And so it's a blessing because we can publish in so many different places, but then you have the curse of choosing which of those you're going to go with. But so what one would probably look at my Vita and go, this person has no focus whatsoever. So, but it is a blessing and a challenge when it comes to interdisciplinary research to eventually, you do have to choose one, but there are more opportunities for interdisciplinary publication, I think, now more than ever. But this remains a wicked problem in academia, interdisciplinary research. So you're not alone.
Not at all, Sarah.
In terms of like the work I've done here with new faculty too, I always encourage them, to have this, kind of 1 or 2 lines of research where they're going to become, expert. And that doesn't mean they can't do what I usually refer to as like these serendipitous studies. They fall into a group of faculty who are going to study, something together, and they pick up an extra publication that's kind of over here on the side. But Dr. Lockee mentioned, if you look at her Vita, it looks all scattered, but she knows the common thread or common threads through them and would be able to explain that to somebody. And that's what you'll have to do when you're going up for a job or you're going up for annual review or something, is you'll have to explain, oh yeah, I've published in, all these interdisciplinary places, but my contribution, my role is always online learning. It was online learning in Wood Science, online learning in Vet Med or something. So you can show somebody that path, not just that you've got something here, or here, all these different things. That doesn't make for a really good trajectory, in my opinion. But, your contribution, there should be some clear, 2 or maybe 3 kind of paths through your work that you could explain to somebody.
Great advice.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we have gone over our time a little bit. I have the room open until 6:30, but I don't obviously expect our guests to stay that long. It's a people and education people. You're more than welcome to stay and chat if you'd like. But to wrap things up, I'd really like to thank first Dr. Hodges for your time. It's been fantastic. Really enjoyed it. Too bad we couldn't have welcomed you back in person to your Hokie home, but or at least had donuts or something. I don't know. That's the worst part about these things. You can't have food. And as always, Dr. Lockee, thank you so much for helping us helm this up and getting in touch with Dr. Hodges as well. It's been, I think, invaluable, and we'll continue threading these things through future professional development series. We're not going to focus completely on academia all the time. There are industry things coming as well. No worries. So we have something for everybody. But yeah, so if everybody have a safe and good holiday, and we'll have us again in the new year, hopefully. So
I was thrilled to be asked back. So thank you very much.
We'll have to do it again, definitely. So thank you so much.
Thank you.